Fordow is really the last remaining nuclear development site, and most of the centrifuges and work is deep underground, about 200 feet, about 60 meters. The only way this could be destroyed is with the American massive ordnance penetrator. This is a weapon that's dropped from a B-2 stealth bomber, very, very high, impacts underground up to 200 feet, and then has a warhead of about 2.5 tons, 2,500 kilograms of synthetic explosive, which will destroy it. Now, there has been quite a lot of bunkum, I think, spoken by perhaps experts who are not particularly expert. This would be a very good way to destroy the Fordham way. Basically, radiation travels in straight lines, but radiation is also stopped by shielding. So 200 foot of rock is the best shield against radiation that you could have. Also, uranium is what we call an alpha emitter. It emits alpha particles. Now, alpha particles are very easily stopped. In fact, your skin will stop alpha particles. It's a very different game if it's beta particles or any others. So that is the thing. There's also been a lot of talk about the contamination. And I see one newspaper talking that there'll be hydrogen fluoride gas produced. I think they're absolutely wrong. There might be some Ukrainian hexafluoride, which is the sort of byproduct of potentially blowing up uranium, which is a gas, a chemical, if you like, very nasty, but it is not, it's not radiation as such, and it's not a nuclear explosion. So we have yet to see from any of the sites attacked any significant release of radiation, and I wouldn't expect to see it anyway. And the contamination that some people are suggesting, if they blow up Fordow, it would be like the Chernobyl accident that spread contamination across Europe. That is absolutely not going to happen. In fact, the contamination will be all contained within the mountain that is the Fordow nuclear power site. Centrifuges are basically where uranium-235, which is the basis of a nuclear weapon, also the basis of a lot of nuclear power stations. You need to enrich it, and basically enrich it by centrifuging it. So that it becomes more powerful. For a nuclear power station, you don't need it enriched really much above 10%. But for a nuclear weapon, so that it can generate the nuclear explosion, it needs to be 90 to 95%. And that's where you need your centrifuges. It takes time, but actually the time and the challenge is getting it from, say, 5% to 60. Above 60, it's exponentially quicker, if that's not an oxymoron. So that is what they're there for, to create the power by enriching uranium to create a nuclear explosion.
Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks. That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today.
I don't necessarily suppose he thinks, 2 weeks sounds like me 2 weeks is the throwaway line. He might well decide to bomb Fordow nuclear facility tomorrow. That wouldn't surprise me. So I think he is hoping, because his deal making, which he tells us is so good, just hasn't worked. He just hasn't done a deal on the world stage of any substance. So it may well be that that he thinks he can get the Iranians to come to the ceasefire table. Interesting enough, the Iranians today have said they won't speak to Trump until the Israelis stop bombing, and it doesn't seem that the Israelis, plan to do that sort of anytime soon. So I would expect this to go on. I think what we're not getting a feel for is how much damage the Israelis are doing to the Iranians. And I sort of gauge it's pretty extensive. They are, on average, seem to be firing about 100 or so major pieces of ordnance. And I mean here, cruise missiles, and virtually all of them seem to be hitting their targets. So, that is a very considerable attack. I gauge that actually they're doing a heck of a lot of damage to the Iranian, a whole host of the Iranian military, the Al-Quds who direct all their people abroad. They're taking out a lot of senior people. So, yeah, I think, I think Iran is senior leadership are really bleeding quite hard at the moment. Maybe Trump's 2 weeks is to, see the lifeblood flow out of the supreme leader and his close associates so that, he can get a much better result.
With your permission, I hope this will be the most correct answer to your question. I do not wish to even discuss such a possibility.
Putin is completely paranoid about his own security and safety. His own bodyguards have to be searched before they get close to him. There are even talk within the Kremlin his own bodyguards aren't allowed to carry weapons because he's worried that somebody might take him out. He apparently has at least 2 doppelgangers. I think Putin knows that if the supreme leader is taken out, then he could well very be next, and a lot of people think that it would be a good thing and a quicker way to get a just ceasefire for Ukraine if Putin wasn't there pulling the strings. I don't think there's a great deal the Russians can do, to be frank. I think their main focus is on Ukraine at the moment. Putin, I think, is probably rather pleased that the world is looking at Iran and not Ukraine, and he is cracking on. And as we've heard only this week, devastating attacks in Kyiv and elsewhere, and Odessa, massive use of cluster bombs, and a lot of casualties, civilian casualties. But it's not headline news because everybody's looking at Iran. So Putin sort of feels he can crack on. So he's quite happy for the Iran thing to keep going because it means that he can sort of almost, under the cover of that, do whatever he wants in Ukraine. The Russians are making a lot of the Shahed drones themselves now in Russia, which is the main currency that it got from Iran. But certainly ammunition, I don't suppose the Russians will be getting any ammunition, which is why they've been scuttling around to get stuff from, North Korea seems to be their main ally and friend supplying them with stuff. I think it'll be a really, really big blow for them. What Iran has exposed is the frailties and the fragility of Russian air defense assets. And that will be a big worry to the Kremlin. But I expect in the Pentagon and in Whitehall, planners will be noting that very carefully, and that'll be a big plus. Had they had a viable nuclear capability, Israel would never have attacked them. I think people see that actually the nuclear card is the goldest card that you can have. It is all the aces put together in your pack, because it generally means that nobody will dare attack you because of the nuclear piece.